Hi guys, Commerce with Mac here today to speak about chapter number 22, Analysis and Interpretation in Easy Terms, Accounting Ratio. Before we move on to this content, I want you to do one particular thing, subscribe the channel and also hit the bell button so whenever I upload a video, you will be notified that these videos are going to be helpful for you. These accounting ratios can be helpful for students who are doing Cambridge O-Level and IGCSE as well as students who are writing AS level and A level. So this is going to be a brief interpretation about analysis and accounting ratios. So let's move on to the content now one by one. So here I'm not going to read the entire thing because I'm not going to do a theory class here, but then I'm going to revise the entire thing within a short span of time. The ratios is the area which we're going to have a look. So let's move on to the area. You might see one particular thing about, before we move on to the content, I want to say one particular thing, that is why accounting ratios are particularly important. Every business needs to compare how much they have grown every year. To compare and see how much they have developed themselves, they need these accounting ratios to see that if they are comparing themselves with a competitor, how much they have grown. Or you can also say that to compare the previous years, how much they have performed, they need these accounting ratios. Most of the time accounting ratios are done to show the owners who has invested in the company that the company has done a fair return on investment, or the company has done in a better performance. All these things will be showing the company's performance most of the time to the owners. So owners will decide, do I need to put more money into the firm because the performance is good, or if the performance is bad, what they need to do. All these things can be analyzed by an accounting ratio. And also here they have said few things like most of the time when it comes to accounting ratios, it's about analysis, like understanding the financial information and also interpreting it in an easy way where the owners can understand. That is what this chapter is all about, analysis and interpretation. So when they analyze, you need to analyze all the details of financial information in an easy manner and interpret in a way they can compare the results between the last years and this year, and also they can compare themselves with the other businesses on the market. But then when we move on to the next part, they have one more particular thing which we also said as working capital. Here they have given one particular thing. Working capital is where the amount of money the business should hold to run the business day to day. That is what we say working capital. And also they have given few more terms for you need to understand. These terms are very important. This one I'm going one by one. Capital owned and capital employed. Capital owned is the amount owned by the business to the owners of the business on a certain date. Capital employed is the total funds which are being used by a business. This may be calculated as the owner's capital plus any non-current liabilities. I'll be going deeper into this area under a term called return on capital employed. So let's look on these particular areas on that particular ratio. So let's move on to the first ratio. According to your syllabus, they have divided your ratios into three: profitability, liquidity, and also they have divided as leverage. So these are three type of ratios they can test. I'm not gonna go on and explain you these things because we don't have much time. But then this question is going to be helpful for us to understand. They have given certain details in income statement, and also they have given certain details in financial position. To do this and have an understanding, you need to have good understanding in your chapter 9 and 10. I think most of the time chapter 8 and 9, you need to have good understanding about financial statement when you are doing this thing. So if you do not have knowledge in financial statement, you should practice chapter 8 and 9 when you come to this particular area. So in future videos I'll be uploading those areas also, how financial statement should be done. Let's move on to the content now. You might see income statement for the year ended 31st December 2017 or 7, whatever the years you can take. They have given cash sales 10,000, credit sales 110,000, cost of sales opening inventory 7,500, purchases all on credit 97,000, and closing inventory 8,500. So they are saying that most of the time our credit purchases are all on credit. So and also they are saying that credit sales are most of the time it is credit sales, means it is a sale which is made on credit. So cash sales we should not take when you are calculating for credit sale calculation. I'll explain you this bit deeper when we move on to different ratios. We'll understand how these areas are worked out. So let's move on to the next part. You have gross profit, administration and selling expense, profits from operation. After you take this 24,000, you deducted this 8,000, you got 16,000. You deducted your financial expense, which is loan interest, and you got 15,000 for the year. So now what you need to understand, okay, just to have a look on these areas: profit for the year, loan interest, then I'm going to speak about credit sales. Then again, cost of sales. The term cost of sales is very important when you're doing revenue. Net revenue is also important. So I'll be explaining how these things work one by one when we are going a bit deep into this calculation. Let me explain you how Arun's financial position works. They are given non-current assets directly to 124,250, inventory 8,500, trade receivables 10,500, bank 12,250, and then they have the total of current assets which they have taken 31,250 plus 124,250. They got the total of 155,500 total assets. Then we have the capital opening balance they have given, and then they have added with the profit for the year, which is the income statement's profit they have added here. Remember here we got a profit income statement. This 15,000 is the amount they have added down under capital, and then they have deducted the drawings. Then after deducting this, they got 123,000, but then they also have taken a loan 20,000 from AB Finance, and the trade payables is 12,500. So you might see that 155,000 is your total asset, total capital and liabilities is 155,500. So it is A equals C plus L. All three are equal. Now let's move on to the sum without wasting our time. And the first ratio which they have spoken is about profitability ratios. Let me explain you how profitability ratios work. Now these things you need to know a good understanding when you are doing in exams. Profitability ratios are used to relate the profit figures to other figures within the same set of financial statements. So normally to understand how much profit you have made from the investment you have made on the business, to get a return on investment, we always see profitability ratios. The first ratio they have taken is the return on capital employed. So they have a formula for ROC, the profit for the year before interest divided by capital employed. Now when they say profit for the year before interest, what is the profit we should take? Let me explain you that. But then how do we calculate capital employed is also another question which you always need to find out. Here you might see that they have said that you take the profit for the year before interest divided by capital employed. Let me explain you how you need to take the values above. Now here the formula, profit for the year before interest is how much? You have profit for the year 15,000. Let me explain you how this works. So profit for the year before interest. Now I'm speaking about capital employed, guys, divide by. So this formula is about profitability ratio, the first ratio, return on capital employed. So return on capital employed has another name. We say that's ROCE, return on capital employed. So profit for the year before interest divide by, we have, what do we have? We have capital employed. So how do we find capital employed? Capital employed formula has a formula. You have the capital, the entire capital you have invested plus the non-current liabilities. So non-current liabilities means the long-term liability the business has taken. Now, how do you find the profit for the year before interest? Yeah, for the profit for the year, you got here 15,000. So before interest means this 1,000, you need to add it back to this 15,000, or you can take this 16,000. That is before the profit for the year before interest. That is 16,000. So I'll take 16,000. Then how do you find my non-current, I mean capital employed? It's easy. You take your capital. So let me show you how it works here. You take your capital. You see your capital is 123,000, which is here, and also you should add the non-current liabilities, which is 20,000. So 123 plus 20,000 will give you 140,000, but you need to show like this: 123,000 plus 20,000. So in total your value is 143,000. So I'm going to take 116,000 divide by 143,000 into 100. Remember, when you're doing profitability ratios, you should multiply it into 100. It's a important thing which you need to note it down. When you are watching this video, you can just put a note. Okay, every time you see a profitability ratio, multiply it by 100. It's very, very, very important, guys. Then what is the answer you are getting for this? The answer is 11.19%. So always remember to round off it to two decimal number. In exams, they might say round off to one decimal number, two decimal numbers. So you should be very careful when you are rounding it off to the nearest number. Don't just take it as 11%. If you take 11%, it's completely wrong. Again, the answer, you won't get marks in your exam. So you should take it to two decimal place or three decimal place. You need to be very careful when you're rounding off the figures. They might say take to two decimal place. Most of the 99.9% of the exams always based on 11.19, which is the 2 decimal place. Then moving on to the second formula. Now we spoke about return on capital employed. Now what is this return on capital employed? Though we calculated ROC, this is the return on income for the money the owner has invested. The owner need to know like all the risk what they are taken, what is the amount of money the business is getting back to them. You might see here this is a very important ratio as it shows the profit earned for every $100 used in the business. In order to earn the profit, the total funds used in the business are the capital of the owners plus the non-current liabilities. The higher the return, the more efficiently the capital is being employed within the business. So when you compare, for example, when you are having the ratios last year 10% and this year 11.19%, then of course the company has done a great job. So here the percentage should increase when you compare the previous figures. But then if your figure is lower, maybe last year 10% and this year 8%, then of course the business has not done in a proper way. So they might ask in exams advice what we need to do for this type of question. So you should say that as the business has not properly utilized their funds in return, then the business should not invest more, or the investor should think to change the strategies to earn an income. So you should be able to give solution. Most of the time this question is tested for 20 mark completely on Cambridge O level as well as IGCSE. So you can't say that it is not an area which is not tested, a highly tested area which every student should know how to calculate this. Then moving on to the next part, gross profit margin. How does this work? So it's very easy formula. We have gross profit divided by revenue into 100. So let's move on to the gross profit here. You can find sales minus cost of sales will give you gross profit. You got gross profit here 24,000, but then you have profit for there 15,000. Now the confusion for the students is like for ROC we got profit before interest. So do we take the same profit before interest or profit for there? This is a question which always students take into their mind. Let me explain how it works. We move on to the second ratio on the profitability ratio, gross profit margin. How gross profit margin works? Gross profit divided by the revenue. So how do we calculate gross profit? It's very easy. They have given the complete value of gross profit on the income statement. When you take the revenue, deduct these cost of sales, you will get gross profit. That's what I said. You need to have good knowledge in chapter 8 and chapter 9 when you're doing this. So when you get gross profit, you divide by the revenue. So your total revenue is 120,000 and your gross profit is 24,000. How do we take the formula? You take the gross profit ratio formula is equal, you take your gross profit divide by the revenue, and then you will be able to find out into 100. So what do we find? Gross profit is 24,000, revenue is 120,000, into 100 will give you how many percentage, guys? It is given a percentage of 20%. So again, as I said, you should multiply it always by 100 because it is a profitability ratio. Then the next thing is the easiest ratio. Again, why gross profit is important when you compare the previous figures. If your gross profit is higher than the last year, then of course you're doing a great job. But if the gross profit percentage is lower than the last year, means you are not doing the business in a much accurate way. The places where you need to control might be your cost of sales and your sales. Either you should increase your sales, either you should decrease your cost of sales. That's the way you can control the gross profit margin. In exams they might ask how can you improve the gross profit margin. So there's two ways. You can say either increase the selling price or decrease the cost of sales. So if you say that, you'll be able to get the 2 marks that easily. This is also called gross profit as a percentage of turnover. Turnover equals net sales less sales returns. This ratio shows the gross profit earned for every $100 of sales. So they're saying when you're taking even sales, you should not take the complete sales. You should take the revenue and sales, both are same, guys. So you should not take the complete sales. You should take the sales. What do you say? We should take the sales minus net returns. So when you take the sales minus return inward, you will get net sales. So net sales is the figure, but here they didn't give net sales. We took the revenue directly. Sometimes in exams they might say sales minus return inward. So you should take the sales, which is the revenue, deduct the return inward, and then find out the net sales. Then here they are saying that different types of industries and trends tend to have different gross profit percentage. The same business may have a similar gross margin from year to year. The higher the return, the more profitable is the business. However, by reducing selling prices slightly and so reducing the gross margin, a business may achieve a high monetary gross profit. So either you can go lower selling price, but then also lower the cost of sales, or higher selling price and lower the cost of sales. So either way, you can increase the gross profit margin. And the third margin is very easy to understand. Again, you can see how can the gross profit margin can be improved. These are the ways, as I said. Increase in selling price, highly tested area, guys. They always ask this type of question. Obtaining cheaper supply, so you reduce your cost of sales. Changing the proportion of different types of goods sold. So you might also see that whatever the goods which is cheaper, you purchase those products and sell it at a higher price. Then you have the next part. If the gross profit margin changes significantly from one year to another, the cost should be investigated. A fall in gross margin may be caused by. So why falling gross profit is always high? Maybe increase in the rate of trade discount. You get a good discount when you purchase the product, but then selling goods at cheaper price. But then when you purchase the product, you get a high discount. So when you get a high discount, it's a good thing. Actually, the business is saving. But then you are not getting cash discounts. You are not actually turning out much sales because you are giving a lot of. If you give a lot of discounts to your customers, customers will be very happy. But on the other time, you lose the money what you are getting. So your sales will go down. Selling goods at cheaper prices. When you sell the goods at a lower price, again your market price will go down. Then of course you can't earn much revenue. Not passing on increased cost to customers. So you're not passing the cost to customers. You are bearing it yourself, then again gross profit margin will fall down. Higher tested area, guys. Then we move on to the third one, which is the last part of profitability ratios. Profit margin has a formula: profit for the year divided by revenue. Now there is a confusion between the students when they take the profit for the year. Do they need to take the profit for the year before interest, or do they need to take the profit for the year? So I would say it's not profit for the year before interest. They said profit for the year on the calculation, which means you need to take this 15,000, which you can see here, divide by the revenue. So gross profit and net profit, it's almost like similar formulas, but then both are divided by revenue, net profit ratio. So how do we take? We take our net profit, divide by revenue into 100. So when we take net profit 15,000 and divide by 120,000 into 100, what is our level of amount? So my calculator says it is 12.5 percentage, guys. Guys, I'm using my calculator, so whenever I'm calculating, I'm not showing it. This is my phone. I use it as my calculator. So whenever I calculate, you can't see in screen, but then you also need to do the same calculation. Take the net profit, divide by 120,000 into 100, you get 12.5 percentage. Now again, when I compare my previous years, if my percentage is very high, my business is doing successfully. If my percentage is very low comparison to the last year, then of course I need to think what has made my business to go low. So there might be reasons, as I said, for gross profit, net profit also you should be able to find the reasons. Here you might see the ratios shows the profit earned by every $100 of revenue. The higher the return, the more profitable is the business. The ratio acts as an indicator of how well a business is able to control its expenses. If the profit margin of a business increases, it indicates that the operating expenses are being controlled. This ratio will be influenced by different types of expense. Some expense increase in proportion to the sales. Example: commission paid on sales made, but other expenses remain the same, but whatever the sales are. Insurance of buildings. Any change in gross margin will also affect the profit margin. So in easy ways, when we are taking the profit margin ratios, reason why it has fall down, there are a lot of reasons. You can say that the cost of sale, the material which was purchased initially was too high. Maybe they're not purchasing at a cheaper cost. You can speak about the insurance charge went high, or you can speak about the commissions are paid high, or you can speak about the marketing strategies expenses are high. When you compare the financial statement for last year, in exams they'll give 2017 and 2018. So when you compare with 2017 2018, see the expenses why it has increased, and always find a reason why this actually has increased. What might be the reason? Giving a reason always will give you the marks on exam paper. So you should say, right, why profit margin can, how can you improve the profit margin? Increase the gross margin, or control the expenses, increase the other income. If you do one of these things, you can increase the level of profit margin. It's a very straightforward one, guys. A fall in the profit margin may be caused by a decrease in the gross profit, an increase in expenses, a decrease in other income, a change in type of expenses, a new type of expense come into the business, or the gross profit falls down. Why a gross profit falls down? Even you can say that cost of sales are high, or you can say sales has gone low. So that might also be a reason why net profit falls, because you take the overall figure of income statement, why it go down. Then it says that a decrease in other income, a change in the type of expenses can also be a reason, a fall in profit margin. Then we'll move on to the next part, which is liquidity ratios. As I'm saying, I'm not going to teach you the entire textbook. I only teach you the important things, which is very important to exams. I don't know how many of y'all are seeing this video when your exams are getting nearby, but this video is very, very important. So watch the video until the end, then only you will understand the entire ratios, which will help you to score better on your exam paper. Before doing any past paper, this video is going to be very, very useful, because I'm taking my time and giving you the knowledge, because this is highly tested area on your exam. So moving on to the next part of the syllabus, the second content which you need to do is liquidity ratios. How do we know liquidity ratios? Very few things they are given: current ratio, quick ratio, and they have these few ratios, which is inventory turnover ratio, and trade receivables ratio, and trade payables ratio. Then you have the final ratio, which is leverage ratio. This is leverage ratio has been opted, in early papers they wanted to put this leverage ratio, but then in new syllabus, leverage ratio is not there completely. So only these two type of ratios you will be tested, which is profitability, and you will be tested the liquidity ratios. So you don't want to learn the debt ratios, because that's a part of AS level and A level. But then, as I said, ratios are divided into three: profitability, liquidity, and gearing or leverage. Leverage is tested in AS and A level. When I do AS and A level calculation, I'll be explaining. But then this is Cambridge O level and IGCSE, so I want to go that deeper into this area. So for your O level, you need to remember only two ratios are tested. One is profitability ratios, other one is liquidity ratios. So let's move on to liquidity ratios one by one. The first ratio which you need to understand is the current ratio. What is liquidity? First of all, how much money the business should have to run the day-to-day expenses of the business is known as liquidity ratios. So when you calculate this, we have the basic formula: current ratio, which is current asset divided by current liability. So how do you find the current asset? You guys already would have given on the financial statement what are the current assets. Here they are given inventory, trade receivables, and bank. So the current asset is 31,250, and current liabilities they are given here as trade payables 12,500. So I'm going to take 31,000 current ratio formula. So do one by one, guys, when I'm doing with you. Current asset divided by current liability. Now what you need to do when you are calculating this thing, you are going to find an answer. We will be taking 31,250 and dividing it by 12,500. So we will get an answer. Let me take my calculator and find it out. So we got 31,250 divided by 12,500. So we got 2.5 percentage, 2.5. Now on profitability ratios, you remember I told you to multiply into 100, but then in current ratio you never multiply it into 100. You just need to take it as like this: 2.5% is to 1. So when you are showing this in this way, 1 is representing the current liabilities. So when one current liability is there, 2.5 percentage of current ratio is there. That is good for the business. Now in this liquidity ratio, there's something called, which you need to understand, benchmark. What is a benchmark? You need to understand that particular term in your exam papers. A benchmark is a set of limit a business should have to make that business sustainable, to make the business in a much more better manner. So to show, like, if your current ratio is more than 2, like here the ratio is 2.5, which is fair. But then if it is more than 2, the business is doing completely fine. It's in a more stable way. So in exams they might ask you to calculate the current ratio and ask 2.5 is to 1 is the answer. Is the business in a sustainable manner? Comment on the above ratio. So you should say that the business is in a stable manner, because they can cover up their current liabilities with the current asset, and still they have to even if they give 1 to current liabilities, they have 1.5 more, because it's 2.5. So it is above the benchmark, which is 2. So you should be able to write this type of answer. I have done certain past papers, so you can go through those past papers and have an understanding how I have already done in this particular area. So moving on to the next part of the content, let's move on to the next ratio, which is so they have given certain definitions of current ratio. Let me read it for your understanding. This is also referred to as working capital ratio. So another term for current ratio is working capital ratio. It compares the assets which are in form of cash, or which can be turned into cash relatively easily within 12 months of time period. So let me erase this off. With the liabilities which are due for repayment within the period of time. This measures the ability of a business to meet its current liabilities when they fall due. Ratios between 1.5:1 and 2:1 are generally regarded as satisfactory. As I said, it is 2.5 above, which means it is so good. The business is doing much better. But it is important to consider size and type of the business. Some businesses necessarily need a large amount of non-current asset, whereas other businesses have a high proportion of current assets. Some business always purchase goods on credit, whereas other business pay cash. Some business obtain long-term loans, whereas other make use of short-term loans or a bank overdraft. If the current ratio is 2:1, it may indicate poor management of the if the current ratio is over 2:1, it may indicate poor management of the current asset. The working capital of the business must be adequate to finance the day-to-day trading activities. They're saying that even if the business has a lot of too much of current assets in on one side, it's not correct. The reason they are not managing the resources properly, it seems. But then on for your concern, you need to understand one particular thing, that though they are not managing the resources properly in exam, you should not write that. You should say that the business is trying to maximize, or they are above the benchmark, they are keeping the level of figures above the race, so the business is stable. If you get a answer which is more than 1.5, more than 2, completely go for an answer in a favorable way. Don't say the business is not doing good, the business should develop that, the business should develop this. So that's completely insane and wrong, guys. Then we move on. The working capital of a business must be adequate to finance the day-to-day trading activities. A business which is short of working capital may encounter the following problems. So they don't have enough money, like the current ratio is not met, like 1.5. They will go through these type of problems. Cannot meet immediate liabilities when they are due. Someone asks the payment, they can't give it, so they are in problem. Experience difficulties in obtaining further supplies on credit. So when they are taking, like when they are getting money from different people, it's very hard to pay the money back to others. Like it's even very hard to collect the money because they are not proper in managing the things. Cannot take advantage of cash discount. So it's very hard to like take advantage of cash discount, because they are already given, like if you give much discount, then you might lose the cash. If you wanted to collect money, you should give discount. So in either way, you might lose something. Cannot take advantages of business opportunities when they arise. So these are the main reasons. Like you can't give discounts because you're on problem, you don't have money. You can't take a lot of business opportunities, you don't have money. You will go through like purchasing goods on credit from someone. Even if you wanted to purchase goods on credit, you need to pay some certain amount. That money is not available. Of course you will go through a lot of problems. Then we'll move on to the next part of the ratio, which is ways to improve the working capital position includes. So how do we improve the current ratio? Introduction of further capital by the owner, putting more funds into the business, obtain long-term loans and non-current liabilities, taking a lot of money to day-to-day running of the business, selling surplus non-current assets, whatever you feel unnecessary, selling them, delaying purchasing non-current assets. You are not purchasing all the money. We say this as over trading. Over trading means you purchase a lot of things and think that everything is needed for the business, but that it's not the complete one. You need to buy what is important rather than buying what is not important to the business. Increasing the profit is also another way. Reducing drawings by the owners. Don't take a lot of money out of the business. That will always end up the business in a bad point of phase. Then we have the actual cash position can also be improved by measures such as delaying payments to credit suppliers. Paying a bit later will improve the level of money the business is holding. Increasing the proportion of cash sales. But if you pay it later, the trade payables will not give you credit more in future. Increasing the proportion of cash sales. If you can make a lot of cash sales, then of course the business will be profitable. And reducing the period of credit allowed to the credit customers. If you reduce the level of time period given to the credit customers, then of course you can collect the money faster. But then on the other way, there's like if you give less time period, the customers will go to the people who are giving more time period. These measures may also have some adverse effect, such as refusal of further supplies on credit, customers moving to other suppliers where long credit is allowed, and so on, which I explained you now. The second type of ratio you need to know for exam is liquid acid test ratio. So liquid test ratio, acid test ratio, or also known as quick ratio. So there are three names: liquid ratio, acid test ratio, and quick ratio. Quick ratio, let me write it here. So what is this formula of quick ratio, guys? It's very easy. Your current assets minus inventory divided by current liability. Why do we remove the inventory? Very important to understand. The reason we remove the inventory is to see how much money we can easily convert into cash. Inventory is not a thing which you can convert into cash easily. It takes some time to sell that and convert into cash. So what you need to do is like, if you can remove the inventory, then of course the business is showing the liquid, actual liquid amount of money the business is holding, like cash, bank, and trade receivable. You might see here the same formula. I'm going to go up and show you how to calculate this. So how do we calculate this figure? We have current asset 31,250. So we're going to take 31,250, deduct the inventory, which is 8,500. So I'm going to take the formula quick ratio or acid test ratio. They can either say any way in exam, but most of the time they say it as acid test ratio. So now we have 31,250. We have current asset CA minus inventory divided by current liabilities. Now this is the second formula which I'm speaking about liquidity ratio. So when I take current liabilities, I will take again the 12,500 itself. Now I just wanted to see if the business is doing great or not. That's something important which I need to have a concern. Then we move on to the next part. What is the value? We have 31,250 deducting 8,500, dividing it by 12,500. So we got a value of 22,750 divided by 12,500 is giving a value of 1.82. I hope so. So now 1.82 is to 1 is also above the benchmark. Again, the business is doing great. Let me explain you. Again, there's a benchmark for liquidity ratio. Again, liquidity ratio, quick ratio, and current ratio should be shown in this particular way. So all the ratios are shown in a different way. You should always be careful when you calculate this type of ratios. Now let me see here. They are saying that the liquidity ratio compares the assets which are in form of money or which will convert into money quickly with the liabilities which are due for repayment in the near future. This is a similar calculation to the current ratio, but the liquid asset test ratio excludes inventory as this is not regarded as a liquid asset. Inventory is two stages away from being money. The goods have to be sold and then the money has to be collected from the debtors. So they are saying that why we are removing the inventory, as I said, if you keep inventory, it's very hard to change it into cash because you need to sell it, then you need to collect that. But then having a cash bank and collecting the money which is trade receivable, it's easy to calculate the current asset ratio. And then you are saying they are saying they have a benchmark of 0.7 is to 1. Again, it's better. It is 1.82 is to 1, and 1% 1 is to 1 you should regard as satisfactory. But as with the current ratio, the size and the type of the business should also be considered. A ratio of 1 is to 1 indicates that the immediate liabilities can meet out the liquid assets without having to sell inventory. So you don't want to sell inventory to pay your debts, because if you have 1 is to 1, then of course you can just pay the debts off when you wanted to shut down the business or when you wanted to continue the business without any problem. Where inventory has to be sold immediately, it can sometimes only be done at a reduced price. If the liquid asset ratio is 1 is to 1, it may indicate poor management of liquid assets, such as having too high a balance on the bank current account. So if they are having too much high of liquid assets, then of course the business is not managing the resource in the proper manner in one term. But then in examiner's term, you should always say that the business is stable because it's more than the benchmark. So 0.7 is to 1 or 1 is to 1 is the correct accuracy of values you can take into the exams. Then the third ratio which we're going to speak about now, it's not, it is going to be completely different with the liquidity ratios which we spoke about quick ratio, we spoke about current ratio, right? But then rates of inventory turnover is completely different, because we are going to calculate two type of calculations on the rate of inventory turnover. One, we're going to take the cost of sales and divide by the average inventory to see how many times the inventory should be sold to cover the cost of sales is the first calculation, and how much days it takes to get the product is done in this formula. Now you see, to get this average inventory, we have here, let me draw it. Cost of sales is a formula they have taken. So when you're taking average inventory, how do you calculate? You take the average inventory as opening inventory, which is opening stock, plus closing stock, divide by 2. So that's how you take the average inventory. If you take average debtors, opening debtors plus closing debtors, divide by 2. Then if you are going for trade payables, opening trade payables, closing trade payables, divided by 2, because they give two figures in exams most of the time. So now let's move on to the point we want to discuss. In this question, I think they haven't given two figures except the inventory. So I'm going to do this both formulas and calculate and show you how rate of inventory turnover works. They will ask inventory turnover ratio or inventory turnover days. So you should be very careful when they're asking this type of terms, because with terms only the students get confused. Now inventory turnover ratio, let me calculate inventory turnover ratio. So how do you calculate this? I'll take my cost of sales divide by, what do you say guys, cost of sales divided by average inventory. So now what is my cost of sales guys? My cost of sales is 120,000. Yeah, you can see here 97,000, 96,000. So I'll take 96,000 divided by average inventory. Opening stock is 7,500, closing stock is 8,500, which means 16,000 together. Divide by 2, so I got 96,000 divided by, this also falls into two brackets. So 96,000 divided by 16,000 divided by 2 is 8,000. So what is my inventory times guys? It's 12 times. I can write here 12 times. So it takes 12 times, like you have 12 times, you need to sell 12 times at least to cover your cost of sales. That's what it says. And that's to know how much times the cost of sales is higher than the number of inventories the business is holding. To cover up the cost of sales, you at least sell 12 times the inventories on the business. And also to know how many days it takes to sell the inventory, you take the average inventory up, cost of sales down. The same formula, but then a small differentiation. So average inventory will come up. What will come down guys? We'll divide by cost of sales. That easy guys. Now I'm going to take into 365 because it's a calculation of 365. So I'll take 80,000, I mean 8,000 divided by 96,000 into 365. So I'll take the number of days as this. You can round it off guys most of the time. So you got, I'm very slow in calculating, so don't be slow like me. 8,000 divided by 96,000, then you got 0.833, something like that. Then you multiply by 365, you got 30.4 days. So you can write 30 days most of the time. You can round it off these days because this is days. Let me see my calculation is correct or wrong. You go down and reconfirm it. So I got a value of 30 days, but then when I confirm it, I have a separate date, a different dates which I'm getting 31 days. It doesn't matter, guys, if your days are almost like similar. My calculation, don't make it round off the figures. You will get certain values, but then go always to this figure. So here in the textbook, there's a small slight mistake. I hope so with my calculation. I always go with my calculation. It's always correct. So 30 days is the correct answer for my calculation, which I have got. If you also get 30 days, then of course, awesome. 30.5, 30.456, something like that. Round it off to 30 days rather than going for 31 days. Then we move on. The rate of inventory turnover is sometimes referred to as inventory turnover. This ratio calculates the number of, let me erase this off, guys. Calculates the number of times the business sells and replaces its inventory in a given period of time. The rate of inventory turnover will obviously vary according to the type of the business. Business selling luxury goods such as expensive jewelry and private jet planes will have a low rate of inventory turnover. They don't always replace the inventory, whereas business selling low value everyday requirements such as fresh pens and newspapers will have a high rate of inventory turnover. So whatever which is selling very faster, that will always have a high rate of inventory turnover, but whatever very expensive doesn't have a very high rate of inventory turnover. The same business may have a similar rate of inventory turnover from year to year. If the rate increase, it may indicate improved efficiency. If the rate decrease, it may indicate that the business has too much inventory or that the sales are slowing down. For example, if the last year is 7 times and this year is 12 times, that means business is selling faster than if the last year is 12 times and this year is 7 times, then the business is doing very slow, which is not good to the business. The quicker the rate of inventory turnover, the less time funds are tied up in inventory, which is regarded as the least liquidity of the current asset. So high faster you have the number of times higher, the more good is to the business, the more good the business is doing in a perfect manner. Then the second ratio is saying the rate of inventory turnover can affect the profit of the business. The number of days is showing how many days it takes for the business to again to refill. You might say 12 times is for a year there are 365 days, right? So 12 times means 30 days. One means even 12 times if you multiply, it's coming around 360 days. In that way, you can also consider that what we have calculated is correct. But then here they are saying that the rate of inventory turnover can affect the profit of the business. If business activity slows down, both the gross profit and the profit for the year will adversely affected. Like if you don't sell much, then of course your sales will not go high. If your sale doesn't go high, your profit will also go down. The lower of inventory turnover can be caused by factors such as why your inventory is not being sold, lower sales resulting in higher inventory levels, you are not selling it properly, inventory over purchase, purchasing a lot of inventory more than the quantity, too high selling price, very high selling price, people are not demanding, fall demand, people are not giving a damn about the product, business activity slowing down. The business is not competing with their competitors properly. Business inefficiency, like they're not managing the resources in a particular proper manner. So these all are the reasons why inventory turnover falls down. Then we have the next time, like how do we improve the number of inventory days? You need to improve the number of sales. If you improve the number of days sales, your number of inventory days will increase. Now let's move on to the second formula, trade receivables turnover. It's easy, the same way which we did for the inventory turnover days. We're going to speak about trade receivable turnover. Here also we speak about the number of days, and also we speak about how do we calculate average trade receivables. Here you can see when you are taking like weeks or months, but then if you are taking, they don't ask in days, they given days, but then they have forgot to give it the other formula, which is the normal number of times. So take credit sales, sometimes textbook also plays the game. Credit sales divided by trade receivable. This is the basic formula of this. They have forgot to give this. Now I'm going to move on to the number of times formula, which is trade receivables turnover, and the trade receivable days here, which is they are given 365. You can either find it with months or even weeks, but then I always go ask you to find with the number of days. So let's move on to the formula and let's calculate. Now credit sales, they are given on the sum as 110,000, and maybe they haven't calculated the trade receivable because they have no opening, yeah, they have no opening trade receivables, only they have closing trade receivables, right guys? So we'll take the credit sales. What is the amount of credit sales they are given? 110,000, and they have given trade receivables of 10,500. To find the number of times, because they are not given average inventory, so I'm going with the direct value. That's the reason they haven't given tested on the paper. I mean, they are not given the textbook because they didn't give the opening inventory and the closing inventory. But for your understanding, I'm taking 110,000 divided by how much, guys? 10,500. So this is giving 10.4 times or 10.5 times. You can round it off to one particular number. This is 10.5 times, which we got for trade receivables turnover. But then we want to find out the number of days. You can take the average trade receivables 10,500 divided by 110,000. So let me put the formula. Average trade receivables divided by credit sales. Even here I had made a small mistake, guys. This part, it should be credit sales divided by average trade receivables, right? So that easy is that, guys, to understand this particular formula. Now after 10,500 into 110,000 into 365 will give you the number of days it takes. This is a inventory, I mean trade receivable turnover days. The first formula is trade receivable turnover ratio. So you should not confuse with the ratio and the number of days. So I take 10,500 and I will divide it by 10,500 divide by 110,000, and then you got 365 multiplied. So I got 34.84 days. I can either calculate it as 34.84, but then I'll make it as 35 days. So you can round it off to the nearest figure. That's fine, guys. Then we move on to the next part of the content. So we almost done with the trade receivables turnover also. The same way which I explained for inventory. I'm also going to say the same thing like what we explained for inventory. You can see here the same explanation. There's no much difference here. This may also be referred to as the trade receivable sales ratio. It measures the average time the credit customer take to pay their accounts. The answer to this calculation, the length of time credit customers actually take to pay their accounts, should be compared with the term of credit allowed to them. The quicker the customers pay their accounts, the better it is. The money can be used for other purpose within the business. The longer a business has to wait for a debt to be paid, the greater the risk of it becoming irrecoverable. Irrecoverable means being bad debt. Now they're saying that when a customer gives the money to you, you should be able to collect it as soon as possible. So the number of days is decreasing means the business is doing in a much better manner. But then if the number of days is increasing means it's not a good way. And also the number of times are increasing when you compare for the last previous time. If your business is doing great, then of course the business is collecting it a fast manner, then the business is doing a great service. Then you might see the same business may have similar trade receivables turnover from year to year. If the period decreases, it may indicate that the credit control policy is being applied more effectively. If the period increases, it may indicate that the credit control policy is inefficient or that longer credit terms are being allowed in order to maintain the quantity of credit sales. So you should be able to understand one particular thing, that if the customers are given too much of loop, like chances of not paying the money, then of course the business is in high risk. The rate of trade receivables turnover can be improved by measures such as, so you might see these are the ways you can improve the trade receivable. You can give discounts, you can improve the credit control policy, like sending regular statement of account, chasing overdue accounts and so on, calling and always asking, have you made the payment, why are you not making. Having good relationship is also making the level of money being collected. Offering cash discount for early settlement, charging interest on overdue account. If they don't pay on time, you put an interest, or you are refusing to supply more in future, refusing further supplies until any outstanding debt is paid, invoice discounting, and debt factoring. So debt factoring is where you send some certain people and request the money for your business, and they will pay to those certain people. Like most of the time, a warrant from the government, like lawyers send certain warrant to those people, so they get upset and they make the payment very soon as possible. You must see, for a fee, a debt factor will maintain the sales ledger, collect the debts, and advance money against those debts. For a fee, a discounter will advance money against certain debts but does not maintain the sales ledger. So if you are giving discounts, you don't want to you don't want to do the same thing what you need to do for debt factor. A debt factor collects everything. He will take a small commission for the service you do, but then discounter will not do like that. He's a bit different comparison to a debt factor, but then it doesn't go that deeper into those debt factor. So let's move on to the last ratio, which is trade payables ratio. How many times it takes to collect your money from the trade payables? The formula is very easy. Credit purchases, they are given it down, so you can take it. Sometimes they will give credit purchase. If they haven't given credit purchase, you can take the cost of sales. So either take credit purchase in exams or either take cost of sales. Both are correct. Most of the time they will give cost of sales rather than credit purchase, because in exam, if they don't say it is a credit purchase, then you need to consider it as cost of sale. So cost of sales divided by average trade payables. So this is the formula. So average trade payables is taken by taking the opening payables and the closing payables. On the last year's closing is this year's opening, and this year's closing is this year's closing itself. So we'll move on to the credit purchases and find out how this formula works. A number of days is completely different, which we already calculated. Average trade payables goes up and credit purchase comes down. So now what is the amount of credit purchase the business has made? You can see here they have already given purchase all on credit 97,000. So I'll take 97,000 and divide by the average trade payables. What is the value they have given? 12,500. So I will get the number of times. Because there's no opening trade payables and closing trade payable, I'm directly taking the values. So I'll take 97,000, right? 97,000 divided by 12,500. I got 7.76 times, so I'll take 7.8 times. And if I'm gonna find the formula of trade payables days, how do I take, guys? Now you know how to calculate average trade payables divided by credit purchases, right? So average trade payables is how much? Average trade payables is 12,500 divided by credit purchase is 97,000 into 365. So the more the days is, the good the business is successful, because you are paying the credit suppliers on time. That's what it shows. So 12,500 divided by 97,000 into 365. So almost like 47 days you are getting. So now this days is like the more the days is goes, the more the business is not doing the business in a proper manner, because they are not paying the customer, the trade payables on time. That's not good for the business. So let's move on to the last part of the content. What does it say? Okay, so let me check the days. They have taken 47. I got 47, so they have taken 48. Because you see, I rounded off for 47. There's a small mistake. Here is also, if you get 47, go with the same along with the way. We have this may also be referred to as the trade payables purchases ratio. It measures the average time taken to pay the accounts of credit suppliers. The answer to this calculation should be compared with the term credit allowed by the suppliers. The same business may have similar trade payables turnover from year to year. If the period decreases, the business is paying suppliers more quickly. So the fast the payment they are making, the good the service will be. If the period increases, it may indicate that the business is short of immediate funds and is finding it difficult to meet debts when they fall due. This ratio can also be influenced by the trade receivables turnover. If the credit customers do not settle their accounts promptly, the business may not be able to pay the credit suppliers promptly. So you should be able to take from the credit customers, which is the sales, and from them only you should be able to make the payment to the whom the suppliers. Taking longer to pay the suppliers means that the business can use the funds for other purposes, but there can be adverse effects such as, like, if you pay it later, the money, you can have the money and you can do a lot of things, but then the bad thing is, like, suppliers will not give you credit in future. The suppliers not even going to make any connection. They will say, no, we can't give because you are taking a lot of time to pay the money back. Loss of any cash discount for early settlement, you don't get any discount received. Damage to the relationship with the suppliers who have a bad image between the supplier. So then that's all, the ratio comes to an end. So there's another content which is like 4 or 5 pages, which I'll be putting on the next video of my ratios calculation. So I have uploaded a lot of videos in Cambridge playlist. If you all wanted to learn a lot of accounting videos, economics videos, business studies videos, everything is uploaded on the Cambridge playlist. You go to Commerce with Mac in YouTube, just find out my playlist in Cambridge. There's like 7115 2281 0452 0450 so much of paper code. I'm doing classes on these areas, and I feel like this is an area for students who are doing for Cambridge O level and IGCSE most probably. So I hope you understood the liquidity ratios and the profitability ratios, how it works, and I also taught you the importance of ratios. On the next video, I'll try to put on like the comparison formulas which they are given below, and we'll see you on another video. But before we close down this video, I want you to do one particular thing. Share to your friends that there's a channel called Commerce with Mac. Aim is to teach the students completely at free cost. As much as videos I can, I will be uploading. And to get these videos onto your notification bar, click the bell button and subscribe the channel, so you'll be learning with me at completely free cost. See you guys on another video. Have a nice day. Good day for you all.